Richardson Studies. Highlighting Ken Bauer's Hiding in Plain Sight, Unmasking the Secret Combinations of the Last Days. Chapter 3, How Firm a Foundation, Exposing Corrupt Foundations, and Chapter 4, Education. Notes by Nate Richardson. Bowers. Chapter 3, How Firm a Foundation, Exposing Corrupt Foundations. History is presented of Rockefeller, J.P. Morgan, Carnegie, and their ties to the FED, IRS, and Income Tax Amendment. They get us to pay more taxes, but they themselves are exempted. When you tax businesses, they never pay it. They merely all increase their prices. So taxing businesses is basically just taxing the citizens more. Prosperity doesn't come from government. It comes from industry and hard work. When China was communist, people got angry and the Tiananmen Square massacre killed thousands of Chinese. Now that they use free enterprise capitalism, their economy is booming. Once a country becomes economically free, allowing free market exchange capitalism, religious freedom soon follows, and the loss of economic liberty brings the loss of religious freedom. China then should soon have religious freedom. Explanation is presented of interlocking tax-exempt foundations controlling the U.S. The Founding Fathers practiced non-invertism. Large colleges today don't have a free market economist professors. This is part of how traditional American values are being replaced. The Ford Foundation pays colleges so long as they can pick who the teachers are, and those teachers get an uncancelable contract so they can teach whatever they want. The Ford Foundation was merging the U.S. with the Soviet Union but wouldn't talk about it. The Rockefellers finance historians who rewrote the past in our books. Roosevelt and Wilson committed large crimes to get the U.S. into World War I and World War II. Cleon Skousen, referring to what J. Reuben Clark taught, said they're preparing for another war, for which you will be just as big a mistake as World War I was. Leaders made the Great Depression last many more years than it needed to. They brought up all the cheap stock, then made billions by putting the country through war. The story of Thomas Jefferson's sexual affair isn't true. Those who speak against the personal life of Jefferson just happen to be the people who are against the ideals which he taught. It's an agenda to change the history for political gain. The book lists the programs, very communist, funded by the Ford Foundation. When a school book teaches true history and morals, it is rejected. Funding is denied. The psychological field gets more money from these foundations to promote situation, ethic, atheism, and collectivism. A Soviet spy named Dodd, who worked for Alger Hiss, spoke of controlling the State Department, and getting the U.S. into war to alter the life of the entire people. Dodd said the war was the most effective way to alter everyone's lives in the way they wanted. Note, they wanted more control and less freedom for the people. Back to the text. The book speaks of a letter in which the Foundation gives directives telling the U.S. President Wilson not to let World War I end too quickly. J. Edgar Hoover said, quote, "The individual is handicapped by coming face to face with conspiracy so monstrous he cannot believe it exists." End quote. Info on the Reese community is presented. The elites controlling the public education is key to their plan. Bowers. Chapter 4. Education. Ben Franklin said the people who know the rights God gave them are hard to enslave, and those who don't know the rights from God are easy to enslave. In 1940, the number one problem in schools was students talking back to teachers. Now it's murder, assault, teen pregnancy, and teachers having sex with students, etc. Note, we can see if we let go the little infractions, things go into bigger infractions. Back to the text. The U.S. was number one in educational achievement for years. Now it's in the 35th spot. Founding fathers wanted localized control over education. Now it's in the hands of the federal government. Thomas Jefferson said, "Place each school under the care of those most interested in its conduct." Hint, that's the parents. Far away bureaucracy of a few thousand people can't make the billions of needed decisions for local schools. James Madison said that when the government takes over education of children and welfare for the poor, it subverts the very foundation of this nation, throwing away the nature of the limited government it was set up for by the people of America. Thomas Jefferson, the man who said, "Let's have separation of church and state," is the man who saw to it that there were Christian hymnals in all the schools and Bibles in the schools. He wanted children to have a religious education. No. When Jefferson wrote a letter calling for separation of church and state, several of the states had state churches. It was clearly understood that this was a sentiment, and the provisions in the First Amendment were about keeping the federal government from getting in the way of the states doing as they so choose concerning religion. Back to the text. Early Americans preferred private education, and the students always did better. What of who could not afford private education? There were always private charities and charity schools which would take care of them. Alex de Tocqueville said it's very rare to find one in America who is not trained in the history of his country, the leading features of the Constitution, and of the doctrines and evidences of his religion. Boston had more private schools than public schools, and by the end of the American Revolution, many towns had no common public schools at all. The private schools were eligible for subsidies. There were no compulsory attendance laws in early America. Communists claimed, quote, "Oh, there are so many children running around in the streets," end quote. The truth is that 91.8% of the children attended school. Private schools saved public from taxes of public school. Unitarian socialists took over Harvard in 1805 and kicked out the Calvinists. The socialists want socialism for others, but not for themselves, because they are egocentric like the rest of us. Humans are indeed egocentric. The Bible teaches that men are wicked and need to be disciplined. Calvinists disciplined students in hard, righteous work, but were kicked out. Socialist Unitarians thought that if everyone were rich, there would be no issues in society, so they geared education systems toward merely earning money. Robert Owen, father of socialism, considered children a blob of plastic, which the society can shape any way it wants. Owen wanted the quote future man, now known as the quote Soviet man. The elite wanted communism, but the public won't have it, so they're slowly bringing it to us via the mandatory public schools. Communism is a way to get compulsion, to get people to be perfect, Satan's plan. Note, if the 20th century taught us nothing else, it is that communism never works. That's what makes communism evil. They want to force the issue, and things get nasty quickly. No matter how cute the theory sounds, it doesn't work. The theory is trash. Back to the text. Rockefeller said, quote, "I want to own nothing and control everything," end quote. Samuel L. Blumenfield in Why the Schools Went Public said, quote, "Educational statism is anti-Republican in all its bearings, and is well adapted in Samuel L. Blumenfield in Why the Schools Went Public said, quote, "Educational statism is anti-Republican in all its bearing and is well adapted to Persia and other European despotism, but not wanted here in the U.S., end quote. The control over education then goes into all other aspects of society by the government. Note, we are certainly seeing this too. Now we have school nurses, school cafeterias, school therapy, etc. Teachers are viewed as having moral authority above parents. The school is focus of the community, and those who don't bow to it are seen as most strange. Property taxes pour into elaborate schools, even in small towns, crushing the people. Back to the text. Public schools replaced the concept of God with the concept of public good. John Dewey, called the founder of modern education, was a humanist along with others of the Skull and Crossbones promote that humans are social animals, not tied to morals or religion. Dewey wants to get rid of profits, capitalism, competition, property, and religion. He says that there is no God and no room for fixed moral absolutes. Stalin invited Dewey to teach in the Soviet Union, and Dewey was so ridiculous that he was fired and returned to America. Dewey taught chemistry without mention of protons, neutrons, atoms, etc., but merely had students bake cakes to experience chemical reaction. Current education trends are following suit. The reason government finances schools is to move education from local control by the people to national control by the government. Government people always claim solutions to public education problems are found in pouring more money into the schools. The PEA and the NEA keep saying that the more federal control there is in the schools, the better they'll be. Note, sounds like one size fits all. That's not human nature. That's why we have separate states, so people can express and live by their preferences. Allowing for differences is what shows us what works and doesn't. Forcing schools to comply with the national standards and values is more centralized communism, making kids a cog in a machine, banning parental influence. In reality, centralized education is a threat to religion and every other freedom. How can a people be free if they can't even choose what to teach their children? Back to the text. The book cites several who say they want the children to be owned by the public and not the parents. The government believes the parents can't handle their own affairs. Government becomes its own publicity for ideas. Clinton proposed that civilians should have no say in the curriculum. The No Child Left Behind NCLB program has, quote, open court, which means the teachers must follow a certain script and even ignore the questions of the students as they promote that script. There are federal police to enforce these mandates in a classroom. See the book The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America by Eiserbart. This was read by Elizabeth Richardson, and you can find these notes at richardsonstudies.com.